Well, greetings, people of the internet. Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, it's all about my tanks. I've made some big changes here with my fish tanks, and I want to show y'all what those changes are and explain to you why I made those changes. So, come on, let's get it. Let's get the video started right now. All right, so let's talk about the ugly duckling in the room. I love this tank. Don't get me wrong. There we go. I think I've got it zoomed in now, but it's just ugly. It's brown, right? And I think it kind of. I mean, the neons, they kind of stand out in this water, but these Buenos Aires tetras, and then I've got one other little like red tetra of some sort back there. I mean, look, with all that brown in there, it's not pretty. Now the tank is healthy. Look, I got a big old fat nerite snail there, and but yeah, it's just the algae on this has gotten out of control. I don't like the looks of the sand. I don't like the rocks that I used in it. I don't care for it. There's a Java fern that is just kind of, withering on the vine. It's not getting something it needs nutrient wise from the water. So I think what I want to do is do what's called a tank reset, and that is basically, I mean, these fish are pretty big too. To be honest with you, I might be better suited to go ahead and move these big old Buenos Aires tetras into my 55-gallon tank permanently, keep the neons, put them in a bucket while I rescape this tank, and then refill it with some neons and perhaps some of these swordtails up here, some of these baby swords, and move them down here. Because these Buenos Aires tetras, I believe they'll get along with most other fish. They are kind of like a schooling fish. I've got 3, 4, 5 of them. The problem is, as you can see, they're getting rather large. They're a good, what, oh, about that long, as long as my finger. So they're pretty big fish. I'll have to do a little research and see if they'll get along all right with the mollies and with guppies, because you see they're a little territorial here, and they got their own little hierarchy set up in this tank. They haven't killed one another or any other fish, but they do like to swim around quite a bit. So we do a little research and see if I can move them in with my guppies and my mollies. And I know I've got a pleco in here as well. But what I'll do is when I go to reset the tank, I'll just rehome these fish temporarily, and then I'll start taking individual items out of here as I clean them and get them the substrate redone. And I'll just leave the pleco alone. He'll as long as I keep water in the tank, he'll be fine. So. But that way it'll give me a chance to get some of this algae out of here, because it's got like, I don't know whether it's called blackbeard algae or what it's called, but I've just never been satisfied with the look of this tank. It's just been more brown than green. So we're going to play around with the substrate as well. This is one of those substrates where I use the floor, what do they call that? You get it from Tractor Supply. It's basically baked clay you can throw on the floor, like cat litter, very similar to that, but it's baked clay. And I use that as my substrate. I didn't charge it with nutrients though. And this substrate is also known for lowering the pH, but it's charged now, so as long as I don't take it out, I'll figure out what to do with it. But I may just peel the top layer of sand off, wash it out, put it back in, and then we'll start from there. But yeah, let's get going on it. And here we are a few hours later. So I basically stripped the tank down to the sand. There were a bunch of stones in there that were like green colored, like almost like a jade color of stone, and I took those out. And then I did a little bit of reading while I took the water level down to about, probably right about there, I scooped all the neon tetras because I don't want to keep neon tetras in this tank. They did really well. I had ick on them when I first got them. I cured them of ick and they're fine now. But I went ahead and moved them into the 55-gallon tank. And I noticed I have an airite snail in here and it's now popped its head out since I've changed out the aquarium. But so I scooped out the neon tetras and I left the Buenos Aires tetras and one, like, it's like a, it's real hard to describe. I don't know the name of this tetra right there, that small reddish one. So if you know the name of that tetra, shout it out down in the comments and let me know what it is. I could look it up. But anyway, I was reading up on these Buenos Aires tetras, and it turns out they're not good tank mates with pretty much anybody other than maybe some cichlids and gouramis and those kind of things, because they're of the same temperament. It's not that they're mean fish, they're territorial and they're nippers. They're fin nippers. They also don't go well with plants. I always wondered why this tank didn't perform well with plants. Well, these things are eating them. They're notorious plant eaters. Well, guess what I have to guess what I just happen to have a plethora of plastic plants. So I just went ahead and plastic plant bombed this tank, put a couple of rocks in there, got three of these rocks from out in the, keep in mind, I'm no aquascapist by a mile, but I do something that looks pleasing to my eye, and then if I don't like it, I change it. But anyway, so it turned out really well. I don't know how to adjust the color on this camera. It looks darker in the camera than it is on hand, so imagine a lighter colored sand. It's not as orangey yellow as this picture portrays it to be. It's more light color. So yeah, I took all the real plants out, which were epiphytes that for some reason I forgot you need to put them on a rock or a piece of wood and not plant. And so they're over here now. The epiphytes are over here, and they're just kind of hanging out. You can see them there in this tank until I figure out what I'm going to do with them. The other thing I took out of here was that piece of wood. And at one point I had a pleco in here. I know, because I put him in here about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I could find hide nor hair of him. I looked all over the wood, cleaned it. And the more I cleaned the wood, the more it kind of disintegrated in my hand. And I wondered why this tank was, you notice it had that brownish, kind of unnatural. Look at these fish. They just love this new tank. They're just having a blast. They adapted really quick. They've been traumatized. I've had my hands in this tank for the last few hours, and at one point you couldn't even see into the tank. It was so filthy because I got all that mulm and detritus up from the sand and sucked it out and wanted to start new. I left some old tank water in here, like I said, about up to there. Filled it back up, treated the water. I've kept these fish in here the whole time. Probably not a great idea. It can really stress your fish. But tetras are tough, and they seem to have recovered just fine. And now this tank does not have that dusky brown glow. It looked like, frankly, it just looked like a crapper. It just looked horrible. Every time I walked by it, I kind of winced. But it turns out it was that wood I had in here. So you got to be careful the kind of wood you select to go into these tanks as well. So I've got a whole thing of wood here next to me, but I'm gonna try it out in just leaving it in a container for a few weeks and see if it does the same thing the wood in here did. I can just do without wood in here for a while. I've got fish coming tomorrow. I've got a bunch of plecos. I got 6 plecos I got to find a home for. I've got 6 catfish, Correadora catfish I got to find a home for. I've got, I think, 10 Amano shrimp. I know where those are going to go. They're going to go in my 10-gallon tanks to try and get rid of this hair algae I can't seem to get rid of, because I can't feed these tanks any less because they got babies in them. But yeah, this tank turned out really well. I've been sitting in front of it for the last, probably half hour now, just enjoying it and watching the tetras finally come out of their shell. And you see why I use spotlights on my tanks. See that shimmer it gives? So even though these are, tacky plastic plants, hey, As long as the fish are happy, I'm happy. And, it doesn't look half bad. You know, most people don't care that you have plastic plants in your tank. Than I do. I still have frog bit on the surface. And I also discovered these fish like to jump quite a bit. So here we are a few days later, and as you can see, the tank has cleared up wonderfully. What you can't see is the little cories I put in here. I've added a school of about 6 Coryodora catfish, of the panda variety in here, and I believe they're all hiding out in the back somewhere. The tetras they're still not quite comfortable in this tank. I don't know whether I'm going to have to get a dither fish to go with them to bring them out of their shell. They come out for lunch, but then they're like, there's a panda cory back there, if you can see him. I don't know if you can. Wiggling around, him and his friend. There they are. So we got some panda cories back there. Anyway, so I'm doing a little research as to, I had neon tetras in here, and I moved them to my 55-gallon tank because I didn't want them in here. It was easier to catch them than it was to let them, kind of go through the process of resetting this tank. And here the cories are all coming out now for a visit. You see how they like to spend their time in groups. So my fear is that right now that these tetras are real aggressive eaters, and I'm afraid they're getting all the food before any gets to the bottom. So I have to feed this tank twice. So I feed it first with a flake, let the tetras go crazy, and then I drop some more bottom feeder food for the cories while these guys aren't looking. So that's what it's become. But I think I'm going to give it a few days on this tank and see if these fish actually start to come out of their shell or not. They seem to be doing better this morning. They're all sitting there, as you can see, waiting for breakfast. And the problem with the cories are they're young and they're hungry, and I want to make sure they're getting enough food to eat. They don't eat fish waste and that kind of thing, so they're only going to eat what the Buenos Aires tetras don't. And it's not that the Buenos Aires tetras are being aggressive to them. They're fast-moving, swift-moving, fearful fish, and I want to get another fish in here, and I'm wondering if I ought to put maybe some cardinal tetras or some green tetras in here, or some black tetras in here, something that'll get these fish to where they come out of their shell more and stay up front. But like I said, they're hungry this morning, so they're all kind of showing off for me. And again, I haven't figured out how to adjust this camera yet, so it appears yellower than it is in person, this tank. And no, I still haven't cleaned the glass because, why? Why would I want to do that? I just actually forgot about it. I did put some floating plants back in it because this is a tank that's going to be harder to maintain all the stuff on it, all the parameters, because there's no live plants. I'll end up putting probably some Boost philandra, or some other epiphytes on some of the rocks here, just so we have a little more capacity on this tank. But I'll have to keep a close eye on the ammonia and the nitrates and the nitrate. But I did use cycled media, I used a cycled filter, and all of this stuff down here, the sand was already cycled, the rocks were already cycled in the tank. My new snail is doing really well. It's taken to the tank. These are a couple of rocks I got out of the front and backyard, cleaned, washed them, and put them in the tank. And I like the effect. I like how the sand turned out. So there's one brave cory that comes out there, and the others are all huddled back here and hiding behind these plastic plants. But overall, I'm happy with the overall appearance of the tank. So it's not like I have enough to do. I've decided to go ahead and reset another tank. This time and there's nothing wrong with this tank. It's my 40-gallon tank on the top with my other 40-gallon tank. This is the one I just redid, the Tetra tank. So this one, I did the substrate originally. I used the Safety Zorb from Tractor Supply, which is basically baked clay, and then I energized that with fluorine base, this powder right here, if I can get it up. Here we go. Fluorine base laterite powder, and then I put this over a um, you notice there's still fish in here. I put this over the top of an undergravel filter, and I was playing around with aerobic and anaerobic, all this kind of different filtration I've used, and my fish are still fine. It's just the water is red because it's got this iron oxide powder lifted up into the water column, so it's going to have to settle out. It has to settle out, and then I'm going to go back. I've already started. I'm going to go back over the top of the black sand with some of this pool sand that I have because I find it's much more. I don't like a black sand aquarium. This one was, and all it did was show all the dirt and debris and everything. And I want this to be a very heavily planted tank. So I've checked the water. The water is fine. It's not low on oxygen or anything. I've kept the water nice and cool so it can hold plenty of oxygen. And I've given it some movement and it's got some air in there. So it'll be fine. And I'm debating whether or not to turn this pump off because all it's going to do is clog up the filter and I'm going to have to take it out, rinse out the filter, put it in again. Whereas if I leave the water still, this stuff should float out and settle down to the bottom. As you can see, it's already starting to collect on the glass here, the fluorine, the laterite powder. It shouldn't hurt the fish. I don't believe it'll hurt the fish. It's just iron oxide, so should be okay. But right now it's about 3:14 on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm just going to wait for this to clear and then I can start going back in with some sand. I've also pushed the existing black sand. I've piled it up to the back. As you can see here, I've kind of sloped the sand up to the back so it gets it makes a berm on the back. It gives a better depth of field to the, and here you can see on the side how I've pushed the sand back up into the corner. So it'll clear here in a little bit. Again, the fishies are fine. I've even got little babies in here. I noticed my orange swordtails had a plethora more of babies. Hopefully they're not all being eaten now because I've taken all the plants out of here. I had so many plants that were just overgrowing in that aquarium, and I mean big swords as well that I've got to get back into the water, but they'll be all right in this tank for now, this other 40-gallon. But yeah, I just have, a ton of, look at the roots on this one, I just have a plethora of plants. So, and then I bought some more. I can't resist buying plants, especially I'm obsessed with Anubias. So I want to try some experience, or to have an experience with Anubias. So I got 4 different varieties of Anubias, and I'm basically just gonna, glue them onto some rocks that I have over here, or or to some wood that, I have this wood here and a bunch of other wood. So I'll figure it out. The key with this 40-gallon aquarium is it was never filled. And I think ultimately what I'll do is I'll probably bring my tetras up to this tank and move the swordtails down to this tank. They're more suited for a 20-gallon, kind of tank to have on their own. And then this could be a mix of tetras. I'd love to get like 20 or 30 of 3 different species of tetras. Have a pleco in here, and then have some nice coreodoras to kind of give it an accent as well. So, it's going to be a work in progress. The first thing I've got to do, though, is let this, and look, you can see a little baby right down there in the waters. It's starting to clear up a little bit. But I'll come back and give you an update as the water clears up. For some reason, the camera's doing it again. So here we are, less than 24 hours later, and you can see why I like to do a reset on tanks. Now, look. I'm sure I'll get some arguments from people that resetting a tank with a fish in it is cruel and they can't see and that water was all cloudy and nasty. And okay, well, then you riddle me this: how do fish survive in the wild when the floods come? I don't know. I don't think that any fish were harmed in the making of this aquarium. And you see, all I've done is go over the top with sand, with pool sand over the top of the black. Now, mind you, I took all the plants out. As you can see, some of them are just free floating here. The roots are exposed, and they'll continue surviving. They're fine. We'll replant them. And as you can see in some spots, I didn't really get all the black sand covered. And look, my snail and my pleco both are now hanging on the heater. They know where they like to be, and that's the way I'm going to keep that heater. So I like to slope my sand into the back of the tank, so create like a slope up there, and then keep it not as thick in the front. But as you can see, I'm going to need to go a little bit thicker here where the black sand is still trying to come through. And these guys are, all they know is they're hungry right now. So I also noticed I had a bunch of other little babies in the tank, but now overnight I see not so many of them. So they probably got predated upon by the bigger fish. That's just the way it goes. Or they're hiding in this grass and I just simply cannot see them because I'm not looking that closely for them. But I don't think the fish are any worse for the wear. They're all lined up waiting to eat and be fed this morning. So I'm going to put some food in here, and then I'll replant it later because I've got work to do today. So I can't mess with it this morning. But I just wanted you to see and I just put this little in aquarium. I think it's a paw fly in aquarium filter, and I just fill that with filter floss. That helps. You could also just leave the water still, but I wanted to make sure the water was oxygenated, had plenty of movement, was getting plenty of oxygen, so the fish didn't suffocate or suffer. And they seem to be doing fine. So again, and now that I'm looking, I see some of the little babies down there at the bottom surviving. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this tank fed along with the rest of my tanks, and then when I make some more changes, I'll share those with you. All right, so it's cloudy because I've been in here disturbing the water, but I've got plants back in. I've got some rocks in there. The fish are already starting to check out the new rocks that I put in there and the new plants. And there's a guppy trying to eat a baby. Eventually it'll catch it or not. Hopefully that baby's got sense enough to go hide somewhere. Anyway, yeah. So slowly but surely, I stole a bunch of jungle val in the back there. As you can see, a bunch of that out of this tank over here, so that I could, use it over here. And it had really nice roots on it. So anyway, hopefully the rocks I put in here will not change the pH of the water too much. I'll do a check on it tomorrow just to make sure. Run some tests on just to be sure it's not, lowering the pH on the tank and putting the fish in danger. Big pH changes. And this little fat mama there, she just keeps having more and more babies. And there's another male right here. You can tell because it's got a sword. And yeah, it looks like we've had a bunch of female babies, not a whole bunch of male babies. Maybe they're getting munched up. And again, the water's cloudy. The tank will be cloudy for a day or two because I keep stirring up the substrate, the sand. And you can see I've just got a very thin layer of sand over that. And then it's really bunched up here in the back because for some reason I felt the need to hump that up, But it made a good place for this plant to go back here. So hopefully, and then I've taken some of this hair grass that I had on hand, I've had for months, and put it in here, and hopefully it'll take off. I built like little rock planters around it. I don't know, I'm just trying stuff. I just see whatever looks nice to my eye, I put it there. And I had to have a place for this. I've had this damn aquarium decoration for nearly 20 years. I didn't want to get rid of it. It's one of my favorites. So I just put a bunch of plants around it. And yeah, I just put a bunch of plants around it. Put it back in the tank so they got somewhere to hang out. And yeah, we'll see. So I'll put some more plants or decorations in tomorrow depending on how I feel. Just seems like this whole area here needs something more. I don't know. Maybe another piece of wood. Maybe a nice big old piece of this wood can go here. I thought I saw a nice, that's kind of a weird looking piece, right? I don't know, it's awfully big for that tank. I don't know. I'll play around with it. All right, so let's just go over the tanks. So Tetra tank. Here we are. Look, I even got the pleco. Perfect timing. There's a little spotted pleco. I got 6 of these. They were tiny when I got them. This one's, I've had it about a week now, and it's gotten pretty big. As you can see, my panda cories are loving the tank. The tetras are now, I've got some friends in there, some other tetras. I think these are the blood red tetras. I don't know. But anyway, they like it. The cories are kind of hanging out here together. It's become a very successful tank reset. I've seen no more brown algae breakout. And I think that was due to that wood I had in here, because it kind of fell apart over the last few days. I've had it outside. It's just kind of crumbled into dust. But they are liking this tank a whole lot. All right, so come up here to my 40 gallon that I reset as well. And you can see up in the grass, I have a plethora of babies in here. I put my floatables back in here. There's my snail trying to escape. The tank has turned out really well. The plants seem to have taken back to it. I went ahead and put some wood in here. We got a couple of cories. These are albino cories up at the front. They're just cute little fish. There's my albino pleco at the back. I get albino plecos and I get these spotted plecos because they don't get real big. Some of these plecos can get 15 inches, like a standard bristlenose pleco. They can get up to 15 inches. It's quite a large fish to have in your tank. Anyway, added some wood, added some more rocks, some more decoration. You can see how the fish are. They, disappear, reappear. But they think they're going to be fed every time I walk up to this. And, swords are very, very kind of friendly fish anyway. And then there's one more tank, and I didn't go into this tank a lot because it was one of those spur of the moment things. I will talk about this tank though. Up here, I bought about 10 Amano shrimp and put them into this tank because, as you can see, I have an ongoing hair algae problem. And it just, too many nutrients in the tank, too much light, too much food. So I've cut back on my feeding, and I've tried to keep the, there's another pleco I got in that order. It's full of snails. It's another way you can tell you're overfeeding a tank, is if you got snails in it. Now, why have I been overfeeding this tank? Well, because it's got little babies in it, and they've got to be fed. And they tend to, they're all hiding back there. If you look really close, you can see the little babies. And this is a breeding tank. That's why I have a big old fat female back there and a couple of frisky males and another female here. And you see her gravid spot. She's got loaded with babies. So she'll be delivering any day now. And they need places to hide. And so I put Amano shrimp in here, 10 of them. I haven't seen one since I put them in here. So I don't know whether they're all dead. But maybe I just can't see them because Amano shrimp are pretty transparent. So anyway, we'll see how it does, but I'm slowly but surely getting the hair algae out of here. Anyway, the tank I wanted to show you that I reset is down here on the bottom, and this is another 10-gallon tank. This was a gravel bottom tank, and it's a grow out tank for the guppies. You can see I got some very pretty fish in here, and it was just overwhelmed with, again, hair algae and out of control. So I reset it, put some sand on the bottom like I often do. Sand bottom tanks just typically do better for me. I went ahead and put that piece of wood in there, and it's releasing tannins. You can see that's why the color of the water is kind of a brownish, yellowish brownish color. And then again, I got some babies in this tank. But anyway, I cleaned that up just so it looked more appealing. And if they're going to have a grow out tank, it might as well be pretty. And this is the saving grace. So while you're transitioning a tank, if you can get stuff to grow on the top, that helps keep the nasty stuff, the ammonia, the nitrates down, because that's what these plants absorb. The ammonia turns into nitrate. They take up the nitrates, release them as nitrite, and it's a cycle. And it helps keep the water clean and safe for the fish, and clean and safe for the plants. So this was my last tank, a 10-gallon that I updated
just because I was tired of the way it looked, not being able to see the fish through all the algae. It was healthy for the fish because they'll eat the algae, and they don't care. They don't care. It's all refuge and food to them. And there is a pleco in here as well. I put plecos. I ordered 6 of these little plecos from Aquahuna. They all came in at the same time, and they've turned out to be pretty healthy and beautiful fish. They're very. This one's probably doubled in size since I got them as well. So, enjoying the algae on the tank. So, there you go. Another reset. So there you go. For those of you that are entertained by such things as my fish tanks, I got some updates done. I just was gonna. I had intended to start all this by doing the 20-gallon update, and then it worked into the 40, and then the 10, and I'm glad I stopped when I did. Otherwise, it could have gotten out of control. But anyway, and this is something you don't have to do. I've got one tank here that I've let go for well over a year now. It's been a plant. It was my first dirted tank, and they just go. They kind of take care of themselves, So it's not like I had to do this. I just didn't like the look of the tanks anymore and decided, hey, it was time for a change. So that's the beauty of this hobby. There's a lot of, if you listen to the chatter out on the internet, everybody's got their own way of setting their tanks up. My way works for me, your way works for you. You can plant plants in sand. People have done it, and even without root tabs, and they grow. Some plants grow better than others. Some grow just fine. A lot of plants get their nutrients out of the water column. You don't even need a substrate for them. You just put them on rock or on wood. But the benefit of plants is that you get a self-sustaining ecosystem. I don't have to do water changes on these that often. The only time I really worry about water changes is when my TDS gets too high. That is my total dissolved solids. And one day I'll do it. There's other people that Bentley Pasco does great videos out there on the chemicals behind aquarium water and that kind of thing, the chemistry behind it. So go check out his videos if you're curious about that. But me, I'm just a simple fish keeper. I do it because I love it, and I love sharing it with other people. So thanks again for coming to see us. We hope you found this video entertaining and informative as always. Please hit the like button on your way out the door. Put your comments down in the comments section. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and click that little notification bell to be notified of new videos when they come out. Don't forget to come back and see us again, and don't forget we'll see all of you on the other side.
I've been watching old Unky Joe from Texas heat to where the cacti grow, fixing server solar power in the land, hoping that his plans all stand, making life a touch more bright underneath those southern lights.